Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Brazos Valley. My name is Pam Johnson, and I am your worship assistant today. I come to this church because I find inspiration and support to resist injustice and work for a better world alongside friends who share my values. We are a welcoming congregation, which means we celebrate and welcome all people of any sexual orientation, race, age, gender identity, ability, or belief. So whoever you are, wherever you have come from, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. Honoring the value of spiritual freedom and diversity, we have no statement of doctrine. As a covenanted community, we search for truth and how it applies to ethical living. Unitarian Universalism is a faith of covenant, not creed. Welcome visitors. We are very happy to have you join us for worship and hope you will continue to get to know us better and find us to be the church community you are looking for. We encourage everyone to visit our website, brazos-uu.org, and our Facebook page and group to keep up with what's going on. If you wish to receive our weekly e-cast and our monthly newsletter, contact our administrator at admin at brazos-uu.org, which you will see on your screen now. On the website, you can sign up to become a digital member of our community. If you want to know what it means to be a member of this church or are interested in joining, please contact our minister, Reverend Christian Schmidt, by email at minister@brazos-uu.org, which you will see on the screen now. Our service today is about UU the Vote, a national organizing effort to get out the vote for this fall's election. We will have elements from UUs from across the nation and from within our own congregation in this special service. We have actually done quite a good job ourselves in contributing to the UU the Vote effort. So far, we have sent out 250 early voting postcards and over 500 postcards for the Texas Youth Postcard Project to get out the climate vote. And there is more to come soon with text banking, which I hear from my daughter is lots of fun. We could not have done this much without the help of each and every one of you.
Friends, welcome from near and far to our worship today. Today we talk about the sacred right and responsibility of voting, of engaging in the democratic process, of having our voices heard in our collective decision-making. May we all have the commitment to engage, the wisdom to decide, and the courage to participate. And now, let us worship.
Thank you, Reverend Christian. Now I invite you to light your own chalice, if you have one, as I light our chalice today. Now, please say our chalice lighting words with me. We light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, as a beacon of hope for all who seek justice, dignity, and compassion, and in celebration of the life of truth and meaning we share together. Now all please join in affirming the mission of our church. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace and to seek the truth in love and to help one another.
Please join me in singing hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. You can change the world with your love. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. You are like no other being. What you can give, no other can give. To the future of our precious children, to the future of the world where we live. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. You can change the world with your love.
All right, everyone. So gather together because we are going to talk about somebody amazing. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was born and raised into a free Black family in 1825. Her family lived in Maryland, where slavery was still legal. Being born free in a land where people who looked like you were enslaved was something that inspired both Frances and her family to become abolitionists.
When she was very young, both of her parents died, and she went to live with her aunt and uncle. Theirs was an abolitionist household. They worked to end slavery, and they also ran a school where Black children, including Frances, received an education.
While still a young teen, she went to work as a housekeeper and seamstress in the household of a Baltimore bookstore owner. Her employers encouraged the inquisitive Frances to use their big library. She devoured books and began to write poetry and essays which appeared in the newspaper. By the time she was 20 years old, her writings were published in her first book, Forest Leaves.
In 1850, Congress passed a law that allowed slave catchers to kidnap, enslave, and sell free Black people in states where slavery was legal. Her aunt and uncle fled from Maryland to Canada. Frances fled to Ohio, which did not allow slavery, and then 2 years later to Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, she became involved in the Underground Railroad, a movement that helped people escaping from slavery. Throughout this all, Frances continued to write and to publish books of poetry, much of it against slavery.
In time, Frances became the first Black woman to earn a living through the use of her words, living modestly and donating much of her income to helping her uncles work with the Underground Railroad. In 1854, the Maine Anti-Slavery Society hired her to travel all over the Northeast to make anti-slavery speeches. She became one of the most famous speakers and authors of her time.
All kinds of people came to hear her speak. but she made a point of not charging Black people admission. Frances was progressive throughout her life. While she wrote and spoke against slavery, she also took other kinds of actions. She refused to wear or eat goods that were farmed by enslaved workers, including cotton and sugar. She wouldn't wear clothes made of cotton or eat food that contained sugar.
In 1860, the year that the Civil War began, Frances Watkins married Benton Harper, who already had 3 children. The two had a daughter together, and Frances took time off from her writing and speaking to tend to her blended family. Unfortunately, just a few short years later, her husband died, leaving her as a young widow responsible for many unpaid bills. Frances Watkins Harper made the difficult decision to send her children to live with relatives and go back on speaking tours in order to make money and provide for her family.
By then, slavery had ended, and she spoke for women's rights and for legal and civil rights for Black people. She wrote poems and essays about the experiences of new freed slaves struggling to make their way despite the damage done to Black people by slavery. In 1870, she joined the Unitarian Church of Philadelphia. There, she found a community where white and Black people came together, and where many shared her passion for justice.
In many ways, Frances Harper was at home in 2 different worlds. Although she was used to working with white people, she also kept her connection to the Black community in Philadelphia. She maintained her membership in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, where she taught Sunday school. She wrote 3 novels specifically for Black people, highlighting family connections and choices about racial identity. She pushed for education and voting rights for Black people, and she encouraged Black children to learn and grow, just as she had been encouraged as a child.
During her long life, as you have heard, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper offered her voice, her words, her money, her labor, and most importantly, her love to the work of justice making for her people. She used her voice and her privilege as an educated free Black woman to raise awareness of the plight of Black people in the United States after the Civil War. We honor her memory and her place among our Unitarian Universalist ancestors.
Now is the time for the offering. If we were having worship service in person, this is the time when we would pass the basket. This church shares the proceeds of the offering plate donation every week to support important nonprofit organizations with which we work. We are proud to support UU the Vote for September and October. Many of you are already working on this grassroots effort to engage and inform voters who need to reclaim their voting power. So remember, your vote is your voice and your power. If you wish to make an offering, you can mail your check, or for your convenience, you can donate online. On our homepage at brazos-uu.org, you can find our mailing address at the bottom, and at the top, you will see a Donate Here tab to click to send donation options. You will see how to donate in the chat box now. Just go to brazos-uu.org/donate-here. May each of us look into our hearts. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope is there? We give thanks for these gifts we have given, for those we receive, and for each other.
May I be light in you. May you be light in me, into our hearts, into our souls, let love abide. May I be love in you. May you be love in me. From this place out to the world for all time. Spirit of life, sources of all that ever was and can be, we are guided by all that is sacred within our own hearts and minds to pray this prayer and to live this prayer. We offer up this simple and profound hope that we may be light, give light, and receive light in all the places we call home, and in this sacred space that reaches across miles and experiences. That we may be love, give love, and receive love out in the world. May we never forget the impact and power of our voices. May we never lose sight of the songs in our hearts. D. Blanchard reminds us that they can be heard as songs of love or of longing, songs of encouragement or of comfort, songs of struggle or of security and care. But most of all, they are the songs of life, giving testimony to what has been, giving praise for all we're given, giving hope for all we strive for, and giving voice to the great mystery that carries each of us in and out of this world. Today, we hear those songs in all the ways we are learning and growing as communities of faith, hope, and love. We hear them as little ones become young ones. We hear them as loved ones pass from this life and into the unknown. And we hear them in the streets and at our polling places as people of faith and conscience pave the way for a better world, a better understanding, deeper care and accountability. And we hear them in the silences, a deep awareness that there are those among us as yet unheard and unaccounted for. May we never, ever forget the impact and the power of our voices. May we never, ever lose sight of the songs in our hearts. May grace and mercy follow us wherever we may go, whatever we feel called to and toward in the days and weeks ahead. Amen. Ashe. And blessed be.
Each week we take a time to share our joys and concerns, those wonderful things happening in our life that we can't but share with one another, and those things that we need a little help holding too. So right now, please feel free to write in the chat your joy or concern so that we might share all of those together. I lift up in particular all those people suffering from natural disasters worldwide, from hurricanes and floods, from fires in the western United States, and all those we don't hear about on the news but are nonetheless affecting people. I pray too for all of those experiencing the effects of the coronavirus, for those of us stuck at home, for those of us sick with it, for those of us who have lost someone with it, or who are helping someone deal with the effects of the virus. I lift up too those who have lost someone dear to them in their lives. There have been too many deaths of late. And all of those experiencing hunger or illness. Now please take a moment to share your particular joy or concern with us so that we might hold them all together. Let's take a moment of silence for that sharing. In this community, we share all of these together. Know that even those that are not expressed in the chat or out loud are still held by all of us together. And know that this community is here for you, now and for many years to come.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. As a song leader, one of the songs that I keep returning to, particularly in these days of uprising and reckoning, is Ella's Song, written by Dr. Bernice Johnson Regan and performed by Sweet Honey and the Rock. Its lyrics, which I know some of you are already very familiar with, set to music the words of Ella Baker, an organizer, activist, leader, teacher, a prophet in the civil rights movement. Until the killing of Black men, Black mothers' sons, becomes as important to the rest of the country as the killing of a white mother's son, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it happens. Ella Baker's words in this song are ones she wrote over 50 years ago, but they could have been written yesterday. And I'll be honest, that reality breaks my heart. It leaves me crying out, will it ever end? For some of us, that question is one that has literal life and death implications that the rest of us cannot fully know. And as much as Ella Baker's words break my heart, they also charge my spirit. Their relevance to today's manifestation of resistance and community reminds me that we are a continuation of something much bigger, much more powerful, much more incredible than this single moment in our history. Our struggles to affirm the humanity and basic rights of Black and brown lives in this country and world, they did not begin with us, and they will not end with us. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Now, I admit it took me several years of singing these words to realize that Ella Baker probably wasn't telling me, Renwadiot Mustafa Taha Hamami, personally to never rest. No. In fact, none of us as individuals should be asked or expected to never rest. But all of us who believe in freedom, as a collective, as a community, we cannot rest. Ella's song, Ella's words are a charge for all of us together as a movement to never rest. We cannot stop fighting, we cannot stop creating, we cannot rest until freedom in its truest and most universal form exists in our world. Our faith as Unitarian Universalists who don't all agree on what happens after this life can all believe that what happens in this life matters so deeply that we have been called heretics, broken unjust laws, and probably gotten ourselves on more than one government list to make it known that we will not rest until freedom for every last one of us comes. And to be that unceasing, everlasting, perseverant, irritatingly prophetic movement that never rests, we need to reaffirm, deepen, and reaffirm our connections to each other as Unitarian Universalists. To remember that if we do this work together, we can not rest. And just as important, to be a true continuation of that much bigger, much more powerful, much more incredible freedom movement, we not only need to sustain our relationships within our faith, but we must build and sustain the relationships with communities and frontline liberators who have been leading the way to universal freedom for generations. We who believe in freedom cannot rest and cannot rest when we act as a truly interdependent collective. When we are carrying our load on the way to liberation, remembering that we are part of a movement reminds us that we are not carrying that load alone. Like a choir whose singers stagger their breathing to make sure a single note remains an unbroken sound, or a hospital that runs non-stop with a rotating staff, like migrating geese who take turns leading, following, or resting in their flying formation. We cannot rest, and we can not rest until freedom comes if we sustain our connections to one another. We need each other so that when we as individuals do rest, we know our movement towards universal freedom carries on, waiting for us to return and temporarily relieve another of their liberation load. As we count down the days to Election Day, we know that no matter the outcomes, our work will continue. We will not rest. We can not rest if we take care of each other and our shared vision for universal freedom that is possible, knowing that each and every one of us is doing the same for all of us. And knowing that our collaboration in this moment is a continuation of a movement that knows there will come a day when we, all of us who believe in freedom, can finally rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
mercy. 'Twas grace and mercy. 'Twas grace and mercy brought me through.
I was 13 years old when I became a Unitarian Universalist. I was raised in this faith, but I was 13 when I claimed it as my own. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was waiting for my parents to finish their committee meetings after service. All the other kids had left, and I was bored. I wandered into the visitor's corner, and a little red wallet card caught my eye. It said in bold letters on the front, "What do Unitarian Universalists believe?" My 13-year-old self wondered, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? As I read the 10 statements written by the Reverend David O. Rankin, in my heart, in my soul, as I read those words, I said, yes, this is what I believe. One phrase in particular planted itself in me like the deepest truth, and I never forgot it. We believe in the motive force of love. It was in that moment when I knew that this was my religion. I start with this story to ground the work of UU the Vote in our theology, which is its foundation and its inspiration. This year marks the 250th anniversary of what we celebrate as the beginning of Universalism in the United States. It was on September 30th, 1770, that Universalist John Murray preached his first sermon on this continent. And the truth that I read in that little red wallet card, the truth I've never forgotten, is the message of Universalism. 250 years ago, in the context of religious notions of God rooted in punishment, damnation, and the division of humanity between worthy and unworthy, saved and damned, the idea of universal salvation, that God's love is unconditional, that no one is cast out, and that salvation is not individual but collective, was radical and liberating. Universalism proclaimed that humanity was bound together in a common destiny, and that love is the thread that binds each of us to the other and everyone to creation. Universalists believe that God is love. They also believed in hell. They just believed that it existed here and now on the earth. The great Universalist preacher Hosea Ballou was clear about how politicians and those in power used fear, stoked fear, to protect their greed and corruption and self-interest, and he knew the suffering that resulted from that. Rather than speak of theology in terms of speculative notions of God, Ballou spoke of it in terms of human experience here and now and our relationships to each other. A society that lives out the motive force of love would be one that fosters joy and liberation and thriving for all people. This is the highest calling of our faith as Unitarian Universalists, to live out, defend, and embrace this motive force of love in our lives, in our actions, in our commitments, and in our society. This is why UU the Vote says, vote love. Today, in our context, we are witnessing the emboldening and authorization of ideologies rooted not in love and interdependence, but in domination, authoritarianism, and dehumanization. And just to be clear, this is not new. It has a long and deadly history on this continent, going back more than 400 years. And yes, even our Universalist ancestors came from that same lineage of Christian European conquest and limited the vision of Universalism only to white society, a limit that we are still trying to redeem ourselves from. It is dehumanization that creates systems that put children in cages, that deny health care to our transgender siblings, that allow police violence and the murder of Black people to continue unabated and without accountability. Dehumanization that allows triage protocols that devalue the lives of disabled people and that lead to systemic divestment from communities. The resources from housing to education, healthcare to jobs, and the criminalization of poverty. Just as Hosea Ballou named it, the tool of dehumanization, its propaganda, is fear. Propaganda that tells us to fear our neighbor, that we are not family and kin, but enemies. This is the exact opposite of our theology of universalism that tells us that we have a common destiny and we are connected to one another in love. This is why UU the Vote says vote, love, defeat, hate. And while the forces of dehumanization and domination have always been a part of U.S. history, so too have been those who have resisted and organized for the values of dignity, equity, humanity, and love. These days are heartbreaking, they're infuriating, and they're frightening. On days when I lose my own strength, I turn to the words of Alice Walker, who reminds us, we remember our ancestors because it is an easy thing to forget, that we are not the first to suffer, rebel, fight, love, and die. The grace with which we embrace life in spite of the pain and the sorrow is always a measure of what has gone before us. We remember our ancestors, theological, familial, and in movement. We remember Francis, Ellen, Watkins, Harper, Hosea Ballou, John Brown, Sitting Bull, Ida B. Wells, Dr. King, Anne Braden, and so many more whose names history does not remember. Those who struggled and risked and fought and loved for the principles of justice, equity, liberty. This is why in UU the Vote we say vote love, we say defeat hate, because dear ones, we are on a precipice. Every single one of our most deeply held values is on the line right now. The current powers in government are showing in everything they do that the inherent worth and dignity of so many immigrants, Black people, disabled folks, trans and queer people does not matter to them. Human agency, interdependence, the democratic process are being disrupted and defiled daily. It is a radical act of faith to not only continue to believe in all of our cherished principles, but to demand them by speaking out, taking risks, organizing, leveraging our resources, and building networks of solidarity and power to protect one another and these values. We are on a precipice, and our actions right now will affect whether we have a chance to continue to bring our bold values forward, to rebuild, expand, and strengthen our democracy, to confront police violence, to upend racial inequity, to change divestment from communities, and make moves to protect the climate. Now is the time to draw on the grace, the courage, and the strength of all those who went before, to widen our comfort zones, and to do all we can to vote, love, and defeat hate. If you haven't taken any form of action yet, sign up for a shift with UU the Vote. I can tell you that it's fun. And if you've written postcards to voters, but you feel nervous about phone banking, do it with your fellow UUs. And if you've been all in with UU the Vote from the beginning, keep it up and start planning for how you will show up and organize after November 3rd. because democracy will not be restored in one election. It's been under systemic attack for decades, and justice will not roll down like waters in one election. Voting matters. It's absolutely critical, but it is not the end. It is just one piece of the long haul work of organizing for a future where all are free and where all can thrive. Will you show up in the streets, set up to contribute to a bail or legal assistance fund, open your church building to protesters needing refuge from state repression, tap into your own endowment or discretionary funds to make sure that grassroots organizers have the funds they need for their work? There is so much to do. And our faith calls us to love more radically, to give more generously, to believe more fervently that another world is possible, and be willing to be all in for that future. As you've heard me say many times before, this is no time for a casual faith, no time for a casual commitment to what you hold most dear. And this is no time to go it alone. Friends, we are in this work together. I invite you to be deeper in this work of UU the Vote with us. May we remember that we are held by love always. May we remember that we are held by and with one another. And may we all together be all in today, tomorrow, next month, and next year for justice, for love, for democracy, and for a future that is free and thriving for all people. May it be so.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these vines. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we cry. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these vines. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
In all of the major religious traditions, people have marked time in seasons. The Jewish high holy days, the Muslim period of Ramadan, earth-based celebrations of solstice and equinox. Each of these seasons, in its own right and in its own way, helps humans to mark the passage of time, to reconnect with what is good and holy and true in each of us and in one another, to travel the spectrum of human emotion and experience, as our ancestors and their ancestors have done for generations. And then there's the rest of the year, the daily turn of the earth, the routines of everyday living. In the Christian tradition, these periods between the major liturgical seasons are known as ordinary time, the weeks when people carry on with the regular duties and rituals of work and family. The wise ones knew that there is a deep importance to this rhythm, that we need both the routine and the normalcy of ordinary time and the temporary suspension of routine and normalcy that the liturgical seasons bring. But what happens when that cycle is upended? When ordinary time is disrupted, maybe permanently? When every day is a constant barrage of hurricanes and wildflowers, of police killings and uprisings, of viruses and climate catastrophe, of repression and resistance? These are no ordinary times, beloveds. But our yearning persists. Perhaps not for ordinary time, with all the ways the status quo is brutal to so many among us, but for extraordinary time. A time when hope is plentiful, when justice is pervasive, when community is resilient, and when love governs us all. Our Unitarian Universalist faith compels us to be builders of extraordinary time, even in the midst of profoundly abnormal ones. Our faith compels us to claim our agency and take action, even as our broken systems strain to keep us passive. To affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every single one of our human siblings by refusing to accept brutality and repression. To lean in to our radical interdependence by working together, organizing our communities to be powerful and prophetic in the face of all the forces that would dehumanize and kill us. Right now, UU the Vote is working ceaselessly to build this kind of extraordinary time. Across the country, hundreds of our congregations are mobilizing volunteers in deep partnership with local and national partners. UUs have reached out to hundreds of thousands of voters with texts and postcards and calls, on track for 1 million before November. We have had deep conversations about the issues that are central to our deepest values. We are fighting voter suppression, mobilizing those who have been disenfranchised, registering neighbors who've never had the chance to make their voices heard. And we are also building power and resources and connections to face together whatever comes after November 3rd. So today, we are asking you to join with us in building this extraordinary time that we are all yearning for. And to mark this threshold year of 2020 and all the possibility and peril it represents, we are inviting every single Unitarian Universalist to help us move into the future, toward extraordinary time in November and beyond, by making a gift to UU the Vote. And since numbers are significant, we want to encourage you to consider a gift that honors the number 2020. Perhaps you are someone who could make a gift of $2,020, an amount that would fund 50,000 calls to voters in critical states. If this is you, now is the time for your generosity. Or maybe you're someone who could give $202 or $20.20 or some multiple of those numbers, helping us pay for fellowships and organizers and staff across the country who are coordinating our phone banks, working with state advocacy networks, building infrastructure of volunteers that's going to last us far beyond this election. Or maybe you, like so many among us, are suffering financially during this time, but maybe your gift of $2.02 can be a symbolic gesture that we are all one that we are working together to build this extraordinary time. Together, friends, as Unitarian Universalists, we are doing extraordinary things in these abnormal and heartbreaking times. And there is so much more to do. Please, give as generously as you are able. For all we have received, and for all that we have found the courage to give, may we be truly thankful. Amen.
Please join me in hymn number 1017, Building a New Way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free, free from hate and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, our world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Now, please join me in extinguishing the chalice. Please repeat with me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again.
Friends, it's time to UU the vote. It's time to make our voices heard, our dreams real, and our votes count. I urge you to vote early if at all possible, and to make sure your friends are voting too. There is reason for optimism as long as we are together. Together, we can make a difference. Our worship has ended, and our service begins. I want to invite you to join us today for coffee hour so that we might see and hear one another in our social hour. The link should be available in your chat right now. See you soon.